All right, we are live. We're gonna give it just another minute or two. Just this is scheduled for 11 p.m. my time, which should be 4 p.m. CST, and then we'll get started. But this is gonna be a good one. Got a lot of good stuff planned. I know it's been a while since you guys have heard from me, so we have some catching up to do, and I think it'll be good. Yeah. All right, and as we're getting started here, I have got some questions to run through, both ones that people asked and ones that I came up with as well. And so we'll run through some of those just to start. If you guys have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat as well. I'll get to those a little bit later. We're just going to cover some other stuff first, and then we'll talk about any other questions you have. So first up, just kind of quick little update. Want to give the timeline of everything that happened within warrior philosophy and what's been going on there. So I started this channel a little over a year ago now. It would have been last kind of like spring into summer, because I felt like there was a ton of value and knowledge to be learned from these warriors and philosophers throughout history, both in modern times and in ancient times. And I felt like there wasn't really a good place to do that. And I felt like kind of that warrior ethos was missing from modern culture. And so I thought that, as someone who was a practitioner of martial arts and for whom martial arts had been like really impactful in my life, I wanted to dig into that and share those sorts of lessons with other people. And I've done a decent amount of content creation in the past on other accounts in like TikTok and personal YouTube and things like that. And I've grown those to decent followings. And so I kind of felt like video is a good medium to do this with, and so I would start there and start making videos. So kind of last summer into fall, we really ramped up. It seemed like other people really resonated with this sort of content as well, which was super cool to see. And so it was a really good journey. I was the one making the videos and doing a lot of the scripting, and then I had my friend and business partner Tim was kind of working behind the scenes. So you guys haven't seen him because he wasn't in the videos, but he was doing like our newsletter that we had, reaching out to sponsors, all the sort of like back end business stuff. So he was a really big part of Warrior Philosophy as well. The thing is, during that time, though, I wasn't working. I had actually quit my job earlier on in the spring and couldn't quite make enough money from Warrior Philosophy in order to like pay for my living expenses and stuff like that. And also, it started just as a hobby and something that I like doing, but it wasn't necessarily built out as like this giant business that will go forever. So it kind of got to the point where it just felt like I needed to go get a job and make some money and was kind of shifting away from the priorities of warrior philosophy. And so just decided to stop posting. And so that's kind of the story of it. But it's been a lot of fun, and I've learned a ton along the way, which has been quite cool. Like you get to learn all of these lessons from all of these super super smart people throughout history, and like I just get to have those forever. So that's pretty sweet. In terms of kind of life updates or where I'm at now. So I did get a job. I moved to Austin, Texas. And so I moved about 6 months ago, got a job at a Y Combinator startup called Upgraded. I do like marketing and growth and content creation there. And so it's awesome. It's like all the stuff that I want to do. And I'm continuing to build the skills that I have been building. And so that's quite cool. If anybody is in Austin, hit me up on like Instagram or something like that. There's tons of good jujitsu, tons of good martial arts in general in Austin, and I know there's got to be some people from Austin who watch the channel. So hit me up. Would love to train or hang if you're there. Other than that, right now I am currently traveling around Europe. I'm actually in Bosnia and Herzegovina right now, and training jujitsu here as well. I'm just here for like a few weeks, so it's pretty short, but have found a little gym here, which is quite cool. It's like I go every morning, and the class is all in like Bosnian, and so like I don't understand what they're saying, but then they explain a little bit in English, and then I just kind of like follow along based on what I know. It's super cool. Everyone's super friendly, so that's been great so far. But yeah, so that's kind of it on life updates and where I'm at, just so you guys are aware. It's not really about me, but I just know some people are curious, so wanted to update you guys. Another question that we've been getting a lot is, will there be more warrior philosophy videos? I don't have a definitive answer here. I will say it's not the main thing that I'm focusing on right now. So honestly, I probably would not expect any within the near future. But at the same time, I do love it, and especially as I get more back into martial arts, because I'd kind of dialed it down a little bit after I moved to Austin, just because I was focusing on other things. I think I might get the itch to cover at least some cool people who are coming up. And there's always new fighters in the UFC, which is super interesting. So yeah, decent chance one of them comes out at some point because of that. But I don't want to get your hopes up too high. I wouldn't be expecting like consistent videos again. Yeah, so there's some updates there. We'll jump into some other questions that people had. Um, some people were asking about greatest warriors throughout history. What's kind of my take on that, and who would I point to as some of the greatest warriors that I really respect and admire? And I think there's a few ways you can break this down. One is in the key ability to fight and to defeat opponents. I think from an individual perspective is usually what we think of. And that's where, to me, someone like a Miyamoto Musashi really stands out as someone who was incredibly, incredibly talented in sword fighting and did that for a long time at the highest level, and had so many principles behind how he fought and how he did the things that he did. And so to me, that's really impressive. Then you've got the people who are kind of more like military strategists or warriors from the big picture, and they can direct other people on the battlefield. And so that's where someone like a Genghis Khan really stands out to me. And he's extremely interesting just in how quickly the Mongols were able to take over so much of Asia and into Europe. And they were so dominant for is kind of a short period of time when you look through compared to like other dynasties, but the level of strategy and thinking that they had that really led to like just execution at the highest level is astounding to me. And I remember one of the things that I learned studying Genghis Khan is they were really, really good at taking the best talent from other people that they had conquered and bringing those people into their fold. And so, back then, the way a lot of armies worked is like you find someone, and they're really good, and you say you conquer them, you just kill everybody because you don't want the enemy to have anyone who's very talented in the art of strategy and war. But the Mongols did not do that. Instead, they would take the best people, and it was definitely kind of by force. It's like, do this or we'll kill you. But they also would give them a lot of benefits so that their life would be quite good if they came and joined the Mongols. And because of that, you get some insane generals who come and join. Like Subadai is one of the best examples of this, who was probably the top most well-known general under Genghis Khan, and helped them go conquer like a bunch of new land. And so to me, that is also quite impressive. And then I'll say the third thing that I really admire in a warrior is people who have the ability to communicate and to teach their principles to others. So, like we just talked about with the Mongols, they were awesome purely from like a warrior perspective, but we don't know anything really about their principles or their strategies. Like they didn't write anything down to pass it on to future generations. And so to me, that's one part that's kind of missing that I wish was there. And so for me, first of all, Miyamoto Musashi is actually a good example of this. So he's kind of got the two, which is really great. But someone like a Sun Tzu, who wrote the book The Art of War, is really really big because he was so good at writing out these principles and teaching other people. And so to me, I really admire that, and I think the more of those different elements that you can combine, the better you get. So even like in a modern day, someone I really respect a lot would be John Danaher, because he's got the ability to teach other people like extremely well. He's very eloquent, very good at breaking things down into very simple form and teaching it to beginners up to, the highest level people. He's also a practitioner. Like he's been doing jujitsu a while. I know he's kind of like his body is kind of broken, which is why he can't compete at the highest level. But still, I've heard like when he was a little bit younger, he was really really good, which totally makes sense. And so people like that are all very impressive to me. One more kind of modern day one, I think Jocko Willink definitely deserves a mention here as someone who's able to do a bunch of those things that we just mentioned, meaning he can go into battle and actually win fights for the United States when he was a Navy SEAL. He can also teach other people. He has a number of books that are really, really solid. He's great at motivating people to go and take action, and he kind of has, he still trains, he still does jujitsu and martial arts, and so he's able to think both from the big picture strategy perspective, but then also actually like apply it in the day to day and to fight and win. So those are some of the people that kind of come to mind for me, at least when you're talking about the greatest warriors in history. All right. Another question that I had gotten is book recommendations for warrior philosophy fans. Um, People always love reading books, and honestly, I wish there was more good books about martial arts. Like there's definitely some, and I'll jump into a few just a second here. But I wish there was more. It feels like compared to other genres, like there's kind of a lack there. So if anybody's got good book recommendations, like send them my way. Maybe I just haven't heard of them. But some of my favorites, this one isn't purely just about warriors and fighting, but it's called King Warrior Magician Lover. And it's a book that breaks down four different archetypes. They were created by Carl Jung, I believe, but they're sort of like the four masculine archetypes. And so in the book, they outline that the ideal man has the characteristics of these four archetypes. And so some of them are kind of self explanatory, but the king would be sort of like the leader energy. So he's the one who oversees the land, who makes the rules, who is also in charge of dealing out punishments if those are needed, but also praises people, builds people up, and kind of keeps everything in order so that everything stays running. So I think a good modern day example of this would be like a CEO. They make things happen, they organize everybody, they're leading the company, and people really look to them to set the example. Then the magician energy is sort of like the teacher or the sage. So think of like a Dumbledore in Harry Potter or like a Gandalf in Lord of the Rings. I think a good modern day equivalent would be someone like Jordan Peterson, who's very, very good at teaching others, at explaining things, at passing on knowledge that he has gained or that other people have gained to others in a very simple manner. So that's another key piece. The lover energy is sort of like the romantic side, but it's also the person who appreciates life, who, isn't necessarily like go, go, go all the time, but knows how to relax and enjoy things. And then, of course, the warrior energy is basically what we talk about on warrior philosophy. It is, the person who is a fighter, but who fights for what is right. Someone who has the ability to like stand up for themselves, stand up for others, to be powerful in a physical situation if that's what is needed. And what the book talks about is there's a balance between all of these. Most people will sort of lean one way more than others. You might have one archetype that's sort of dominant. But it's as a man, you should try and develop all of those. And for me, that was a really big it was a really influential book, in part, I think, because like, growing up, I wasn't necessarily a warrior by nature. Like, I was, like, a pretty small kid, always, like, scared of getting in fights and things like that, like, I just wasn't really very physical. And so as I got older, I wanted to do more of that, and that's what led to me getting into martial arts and then even into starting warrior philosophy in order to, like, teach other people about these sorts of principles and to learn them myself. And so I think if you read that book, you'll come away with a ton of really good principles. If you just like the warrior stuff, just read the chapter on the warrior archetype. Like that's totally fine. You don't have to read the whole thing, but it's really solid. Another one is called A Fighter's Heart by Sam Sheridan, and this is a like autobiography of this guy who was a fighter and wanted to learn and study the art of fighting in a bunch of different ways. And so he would travel around the world to different cultures where fighting was a big part of their culture, like learn from them, study them, and basically talk about his experience. He's a really good writer, and it is such a fun and interesting book. It's not like dense nonfiction, like here's how to do this and this and this. It's just like a story of him going to Thailand, and he's training for a few months, and he almost gets sick because he gets caught in the rain, but then like he doesn't, and then he has a fight and he knocks the guy out with a knee. And it's like just like these crazy cool stories. And I remember I read that book first after I had just come back from Thailand, where I studied abroad for a while and I trained Muay Thai while I was there. And it was just such a good like brought back all the memories of like being in Thailand and what it's like to train. And so that was yeah, quite cool. It's quite a fun book. Another one kinda similar to that, actually 2 more that are similar in terms of their, like, stories, like, their biographies or autobiographies, but they're more just, like, interesting to kinda hear the story of a fighter. One is called A Prayer Before Dawn. This is going back to Thailand, about a guy who is imprisoned in a Thai prison, in one of the most notorious prisons where it's just brutal, and people are fighting all the time, getting into all sorts of violence, drugs, gangs, all of that stuff. And how he starts to like learn, or he has learned before, but within the prison he starts to fight and kind of like join this little like group of fighters. And so it kind of just tells his journey going through that. It's very inspiring, but in a way that's like you're seeing someone really suffer, because it's not like a fun book like, oh, this, everything's happy go lucky and it's all sunshine and rainbows. It's not like that at all. It's pretty dark actually. But it's a real good prison story from someone who has gone through it and who was a fighter and fought in Thailand. And then the last one in that kind of trio is Tim Kennedy's book, Scars and Stripes. If you don't know who Tim Kennedy is, he is a former Green Beret, and he's also a UFC fighter. So someone who definitely lives this warrior lifestyle. And that's his autobiography of just like his life. It's super fun, super well written, super interesting. And he's just like kind of like a crazy cool guy who's done all of this stuff. And yeah, learned a lot from it. Quite interesting. The last one I'll throw out here for book recommendations that I really like is called Wild at Heart. And this one is it's a little bit less about fighting, but I think it kind of gets at the core message of like what I tried to teach in warrior philosophy and what we were talking about earlier, which is just this idea that in modern culture, people are taught to fit in and to be normal and to live these civilized lives. And that's like all fine and good, except that we weren't meant to do that. Like as we evolved throughout history, especially as men, we're meant to be adventurous and to go explore, to go into the wilderness and to be wild and to fight and things like that. And this book sort of teaches, it's sort of like a roadmap of how to bring some of that back into your life and why it's good to bring that back into your life. And so I felt like it was a really good kind of just like wake up call of like, oh yeah, there's actually a different way to live, and this is really a good way to live. So it kind of felt freeing in the sense of you can, yeah, you can. It's okay, like you have permission to kind of be a little bit more wild and not feel like you have to like tone yourself down or hide in the modern world where everything's so sanitized, and you don't have a lot of like freedom or adventure, I guess is a good way to put it. So those are some books there. I see we've got a couple questions in the comments or in the chat. So someone's asking, "What's your opinion on the law of detachment?" I think Fedor Emelianenko is a good example of a fighter that uses this. Good question. I'm not 100% sure what you mean by the law of detachment, but I would assume basically like kind of separating yourself from the results, or detaching yourself from being so involved in the things around you and from caring too much. And feel free to chime in with anything else there. But I think that is I think that's a really helpful principle. And what it makes me think of is the idea of in any field, and I think I've first heard this in Buddhism, but separate your actions from the results that those actions might bring. And so the thing is, like, if you're going to fight, you can train as much as possible, you can study everything, but at some point, your training, like, it is what it is. You've done everything you can, but now how the fight goes may be up to forces outside of your control. Now it's still partly up to your control for sure. Like that's the whole point of training and mental toughness and all of that. But say for example, like the referee makes a really bad call and everyone's like, "Oh, this is so unfair. These, oh, you should have won, but you've lost because of this bad call." Blah blah blah. You like you that outcome is now detached from any of the effort that you put in, and so all you can do is leave it all out on the court. But whether or not that gets you the result is out of your control, and so you do everything you can. But then where people waste a lot of time and energy is being so attached to the outcomes when they aren't the ones actually like making a decision that leads to the outcome. So you can do everything right, but it doesn't always mean things are going to go your way. And that's like anyone who's lived life has seen that happen. Sometimes you do everything perfectly and it just doesn't go your way. Or we've all met that person who's like such a good person, but then, they get cancer or their wife gets cancer or their kid gets in a tragic accident. And you look at it and you're like, life, like, how is this fair? This person is so good. They've done everything right, but it just didn't go their way. And that's part of life. You're going to run into thousands of things like that throughout life, and all you can do is put in the action as much as possible to try and get the result you want. But then actually, whether or not you get the result, it's not up to you. So I think that idea of detachment is quite good. All right, and then R.A. Yadav, he's adding more stuff in. So he says it's kind of opposite the law of attraction, but some people say they go hand in hand. You have to use both of them in order to manifest the desired outcome. Okay, okay. I like that. Yeah, so it's not, you're speaking things into existence, but you're kind of detached from the the thing that you maybe don't want to happen. Yeah, so I don't know. I think there's a lot of I guess how I feel is there's a lot of people, including a lot of fighters, like I think Conor McGregor is a great example of this, as someone who is very big on the law of attraction. But the thing is you can find people who have gone a certain route or believe a certain thing and claim that that's really helpful to them in sort of any field. Like some people are very big on setting goals. They're like, oh, you need to set, these super ambitious goals and then work every day to achieve them. But then you'll find other people who are just as successful who say, like, oh no, I don't really care too much about goals. I may be more focused on inputs. I just break down what are the inputs that I have to do every day. And then the goals take care of themselves. Like that's sort of the Bill Belichick approach. He has a book, I think, called The Score Takes Care of Itself or something similar to that. And it's sort of that idea. Um, so yeah, I think there's many different approaches that work, but I do think you should test different ones and see what works best for you. For some people, law of attraction, incredible. For other people, something like the law of detachment might work just as well. Cool. Seeing a few more comments come in. I think people are starting to slowly come into the stream. Um, Good to see you guys. Thanks for showing up and tuning in. I know it's been a little while. And just to give kind of a quick update again, so I my day is going well. My day is going well. I am currently doing some traveling. I am in Bosnia and Herzegovina, um, and I'm actually training jujitsu here. I found a cool little gym, and they were happy to have me. So I go usually in the mornings, and the classes are conducted in like Bosnian, and I don't really understand what they're saying. But they'll explain a little bit in English, and I just kind of follow along. So that's fun. Everyone's super friendly, so that's great. And then I recently moved to Austin, Texas, and so that's kind of been like a shift this year, which is also part of why I stopped posting videos to the Warrior Philosophy channel. Basically, I wasn't working as I was really like growing the Warrior Philosophy channel. I was just focused on that, which was awesome. But it got to the point where I did need to make some money, did need to get a job, and was kind of always thinking of like moving somewhere else from where I'm from. I'm from Minneapolis, and so the timing just connected where it made sense to shift focus elsewhere. Move to Austin. I got a job there. It's awesome. I work at a startup. I do like content creation and marketing and growth there, and but had been more focused on that. So the videos stopped because of that. But yeah, so that's kind of the short version, short update. But things have been good. Yeah, so good stuff there. A couple more questions. Just reading this comment. This guy's saying, yeah, moving is a huge priority. You don't need to worry about not posting since you had your priorities set. Yep. Yep. Yeah. It's I don't know. It's been honestly things are going like very, very well, almost too well. Like everything's just sort of clicking these days and life is quite good. But that's kind of the short version of where I'm at. We'll jump back into some more questions. I had a few more. So another one is like, who do you have in upcoming UFC 320? I honestly hadn't been watching too much UFC recently, but got back into it. Recently watched the first Ankalaev and Pajeda fight. Man, it's good. It's good. But at the same time, I kind of felt like Pajeda didn't really look like himself. Like obviously, yeah, he did, and he was still really solid, but he was he's kind of on his back feet a lot of the time, and it felt like it wasn't quite like prime Pajeda is how I felt at least. But I do love Ankalaev. Um, just that whole vibe. I'm a big fan of, and always like a big fan of kind of the underdog or like someone who is coming up as the challenger. And so I think if I had to pick, I honestly would go Ankalaev. I don't know if that's a crazy take, but that'd be my pick for that one. And then just watch the Marab and Umar Nurmagomedov fight, and that was super good too. Especially the first three rounds were crazy, and just felt like it was like right. They were both right in there, like a lot of back and forth. Really, really good fight. And then it felt like Umar just like gassed out in the last two rounds, and you could tell he just wasn't really there. It was just kind of swinging randomly, didn't really do a lot when he had opportunities. And so I think I'm still like super hyped to see kind of what Umar does in the future. Especially with like Khabib as his coach, and like he's just I think he'll be a killer, but maybe he just still needs to do a little bit more development. But yeah, Marab was looking good. That was the kind of the point of that story. So I think I got to pick Marab there. But yeah, yeah. And Brian, I did not watch Hamzat versus Dreykus. Yeah, I haven't seen that one, but I don't know. I'm Team Kamzat. I love that dude, and he's always yeah. He's just an animal. Like just there's a really good. You guys probably will know this channel. But Patrick Gavia or Gavia, I don't know how you say his name, is a YouTube channel that I really like. He does like UFC MMA documentaries, and um, so he has a really good one on Hamzat, and there's a scene where he's like he's sleeping in the gym as he's coming up, and he's just like there working all the time. It's super dope. So yeah, someone saying I missed a lot. That could be. I don't even know. I don't know what's up. I don't know what's happened. Honestly, don't spoil it for me if I'll actually go watch that later. But yeah, good stuff there. Good stuff there in the UFC. Yeah, so that's some of the key things. One other question was favorite video that I've made so far on the Warrior Philosophy channel. I'm also curious if you guys have like one that you really like or like one that you go back to. Um, let me know. But some of the ones I really liked, first of all, the Islam one, just because that was that was one that really was like a pivotal moment for warrior philosophy. And I remember when I was scripting and coming up with a video, was I just pulled like a late night work session where I was with my friend Tim, who I mentioned earlier, who's like my business partner, and we were working on warrior philosophy together. We are actually at his cabin, just doing like some work on I don't know, just kind of life. We were up there doing stuff, and I just like kind of pulled a deep late night work session, chugged some coffee at 10 p.m., got after it, and was just like scripting like the whole night basically and like finding clips for the video and stuff. So it's pretty dialed in, and it ended up being a really good video, I think, because of that point in time. And so that was fun to kind of like get one. I did love a good work session like that. So that was nice to um get that going. So that was a good one. Another really solid one is Danaher. Honestly, just love John Danaher as like a person in general. I think he's extremely eloquent, extremely good at uh, teaching people things in a very simple way. He has an incredible memory, and so I love learning from him. I've listened to his episodes on like Joe Rogan and Lex Friedman a ton of times, and so it was fun to put that one together and hopefully teach some other people about John Danaher and what he's done. And then this one, eh, was a little bit different, but the Chris Bumstead video, he's more of like a weightlifter than a fighter. So maybe not as many people within the MMA world know him, but he's got a lot of really good principles, and I think is a cool example of someone who kind of is different than the traditional like champion that you see. He's not very loud, he's not very outspoken, he kind of has like a lisp and is more introverted, but is one of the best of all time and just has like a cool demeanor about him. And so I think there's a lot to learn from him too. So those are some of my favorites. Cool. Yeah, someone saying the Ilya video, that was solid. Yeah. Missing major lore with Hamzat and some other people, it sounds like. That's good. I got some good stuff to catch up on. Yeah, and then, last thing to talk about, I think, unless other people have more questions, feel free to throw them in the chat, but would just is, like, how to integrate the warrior ethos in today's society, and I think that is, like, a really good question, and I don't necessarily have a great answer because I do think our society has changed in such a way that what what great warriors of old used to be praised for and the way they used to live their life is not really an option anymore in terms of like you can't just go out and like go start fighting people or go conquering new lands, and not necessarily like that was good, obviously like many people died at the hands of these warriors that we cover, but I do think for sure training some sort of martial art is a great way to build that, and it just shows up differently in your life, but you do bring a level of, like, calm and tranquility in times of stress if you are someone who's kind of developed this side of you of, like, by training martial arts or by studying. And so I think that's a really big one. You can also choose different careers that are more aligned with that. So something like, being a policeman or even in the military are things that sort of go more in line with that warrior ethos. Uh, but I think at the end of the day, it probably comes to something that's more like you have to adapt the principles for how the world today works, but a lot of the principles are still going to be the same. So, like, one that Jocko Willink often talks about is a bias towards action, or like default aggressive is what he calls it, which I think is a great way to live, just meaning always be looking for or always default to taking action, to making something happen. Don't just sit there waiting around for other things to happen to you, but you want to go and happen to life. And I think that's something that the best warriors do. Like they know it's not that you're always attacking, but you are looking for the opportunities to attack. And when you see them, you go all in, and that applies to, if you're on the battlefield, but it also applies if you are starting a business or if you're working out or if you have some hobby that you're trying to get better at, trying to build a new skill. And so I think things like that are really key. And that's one of the reasons that I love studying these different warriors throughout history is you get to learn all of these principles and then just apply it to your own everyday life. And so, Yeah, even if you can't necessarily apply it the same way that people used to back in the day, the principles themselves are still really big and will always be quite important. Cool. Cool. Well, that's what I had for tonight. Um, if you guys have anything else you want to add, feel free to throw it in the chat. But otherwise, yeah, we'll wrap it up pretty soon here. Just wanted to give you guys an update. I know it always kind of sucks when someone that you like followed or listened to for a while just stops posting. So I don't want to leave people hanging. Wanted to at least give you guys an update. Yeah, and Brian is asking, what are some lessons you've applied from all of these warriors that you have learned about? Great question. Some of the big ones I would say from Conor McGregor, definitely the power of the mind of like visualization, but even if sometimes visualization sounds like really woo woo and like oh it like feels like this weird thing that I don't know if it's real or not, but I think maybe it's best put by his quote, which is at the end of the day, you gotta feel some way. So why not feel unstoppable? Why not feel unbeatable? Why not feel like the best to ever do it? And that's like, he's got his kind of Connor way of saying it, but it's just the idea that like your brain is going to be saying things whether you try to or not. And so if you want those to be negative and you're just like beating yourself up all day and telling yourself you're not good enough, like that's fine, but it's probably not going to serve you. So you might as well rewire your brain and like just practice different self-talk that's more positive, that is putting positive things into your consciousness, into your belief, so that it builds your confidence, makes you think that you can do more things. And so for me, like that's just a habit. Like it's easier said than done. But the more you can practice that and do it repeatedly, is really good. And so I've been getting better at that. I think it's helped build confidence in my ability to like succeed at new things. And so that's been really solid. Another one I think of is from John Donaher, and he's talking about like tips for getting better at jujitsu. But one of his principles that I think is often overlooked is he says that one of the key things in whether or not you will actually attempt a new move that you're learning in jujitsu is whether or not you have the confidence that this could possibly work. And if you're always going against people who are much better than you, you're probably not going to build much confidence in that move because the likelihood of success like just isn't going to be that high. And so a lot of times you actually want to train with people who are lower belt levels than you, who are worse than you, so that you can get repetitions of this move you're trying to learn and make it work. And from there, that builds your confidence. And I think the principle there is know when to like tone down or when to go with people who are actually at a lower level than you in order to build confidence in any skill. And I've seen this too. Like for example, back in college, I worked at this venture capital firm, and every semester we'd have like new people come in who are working at the company. And oftentimes, when people were new analysts, they would be very nervous. They'd be very hesitant to speak up in meetings, to share their ideas, to maybe contradict what someone else said, even though that's what we want. Because in a venture capital firm, you have to make decisions about to invest or not invest. So you need like a lot of really good discussion. But then I would see as they got a little bit older and as new people would come in, and all of a sudden they weren't the new guy. So they weren't like worried about looking stupid, because I'm brand new and I want to make a good impression. Now all of a sudden their confidence built because they could kind of like verbally spar and talk with these people who had just come in who are brand new. And all of a sudden it would build their confidence. And now all of a sudden they're the ones speaking up in meetings. They're bringing all these new ideas. They're suggesting all these things. They're taking action. And so I think looking for that whenever you're trying to build a new skill is quite important. And then maybe the last one I'll throw in, and I talked about this a little bit before, but it's just from Chris Bumstead, the idea that there's many, many different paths to success. And so just because you hear one person say, this is how you have to do it, even like Conor McGregor, law of attraction, or like this insane confidence. It's like, yeah, that's one way to do it. But there are also people who aren't very confident. They're not very loud. They're not very showy, and they still find success as well. And so, really, what it comes down to is more learning the key principles, but then also finding where you can double down on your strengths or your nature. Like if you're wired a certain way, and you're always fighting against that because someone else told you you have to act differently in order to be successful, you're just going to be fighting an uphill battle the whole way. And so instead, you should figure out what your nature is and then find a path that flows through that, where things seem simpler and seem more in line with who you are. While obviously, fixing weaknesses and things like that. So there's many different paths to success. It's just about figuring out which ones align with who you are as a person. So that's another good one. Yeah. All right. That is it for right now. We'll wrap it up. Thank you guys all for tuning in. This is great. It was fun to connect. Again, feel free to shoot me a message. You can find my email in on the YouTube channel, or I think my Instagram is linked there as well. If anybody is in Austin, Texas, or even just passing through, shoot me a message. Would love to train. Would love to chat. Always down to hang with other people who are into warrior philosophy, UFC, fighting, martial arts, self improvement, that sort of thing. So if that's your thing, shoot me a message. Would love to connect. But again, thank you guys. Appreciate everything, and I will see you later.